But the Warner Theater in Torrington is an exception. The Art Deco Palace is a survivor by the skin of its teeth, as Jim Forbes reports.
My mother sat here, and my brother sat here.
They sat there more than a half-century ago, August 19th, 1931. Wilbur Cross wasn't a Parkway yet. He was still the governor. Hoover was feeling the heat in the kitchen from Roosevelt. And Torrington was experiencing the most memorable night of its history. That's how Walter Nadasky remembers the premiere evening of the new 2,000-seat Warner Theater. And he saw it all for a then very expensive 35 cents.
To see something like this in Torrington was really quite a big thing.
Quite a big thing indeed. The Hollywood hype called it the event of events. Stores held special week-long sales in its honor. Business cast a hopeful eye this would be the catalyst to revive a depression-torn downtown. So with the splash and splendor that made the Warner Brothers who they were, Torrington greeted its new theater. While there was no guarantee of perpetual blockbusters, it was certain Torrington would see the Warner stable, some of the hottest players on the silver screen. One thing no one today seems able to explain is why this theater was so lavish. There were others in town, even owned by Warner. Torrington's population was only about 25,000. And Art Deco architecture was usually reserved for halls like Hartford's Bushnell Auditorium. Apparently, Jack Warner himself wondered just what was going on in Torrington.
When Jack Warner first came in, about three-quarters of the way through the construction of the theater, he fired his construction manager on the spot, because even in those days, the theater was just too large.
What Warner probably foresaw became a reality. Skidding on hard times much of the past decade, the theater closed down about 2 years ago. Warner hadn't owned it for many years. What one group of merchants had once eyed as a brighter spot on Main Street, another group now pictured as that new lot for much-needed parking.
But once the reality of it being closed in this kind of dark hole that was kind of lifeless was sitting in the middle of downtown, then people began to realize more and more how important the theater was to them in this area.
McIntyre announced she and her small group would buy the theater and save it. Well, they only needed $130,000, and they had 6 weeks to get it.
They had determination and they had ambition, but they had absolutely no money in their corporation. They had absolutely no assets.
Some snickered privately that while McIntyre didn't have many dollars, she also didn't have much sense. Torrington's unemployment rate hovered around 13% all year. Money was for the necessities, not luxuries. Few could afford the bank's high mortgage rates. Still, by the last week, nearly $100,000 had been raised, including a $75,000 mortgage.
But you only have 48 hours left.
I'm aware of that.
We're trying. How are you going to do it?
Well, we're looking for an extension if it's possible.
The extension was granted, but only for 2 weeks, and that deadline was absolute. On the final day, McIntyre was still $30,000 short.
We had actually gotten to the point where we had drafted a letter to go to the other law firm indicating that we were pulling out and we wanted our deposit money back.
But the letter was never mailed. Herbst got a phone call from McIntyre.
I was kind of numbed out.
I forget her precise words, but it was probably something along the line of, well, we've got it. We've put it together.
I know that he was commenting on how calm I sounded, which I thought was really funny at the time.
We've gotten a phone call, and somebody's got a loan for us for $30,000.
Sat down and cried for a long time after I hung up the phone.
Of that $132,000 in purchase money, about $27,000 came from personal donations. That represents $1 for almost every resident of Torrington. And the momentum didn't stop. Renovation money was still needed.
We're trying to get that roof fixed on the Warner, and we're counting on you to do it.
It wasn't an elaborate coast-to-coast setup like you see on Labor Day. Laurel Cablevision has only 16,000 subscribers. But over one weekend, those viewers chipped in another 12,000 in pledges.